morning, Bravo bosses, and welcome to I Take Bravo Very Seriously with me, your host, Dana. Today I'm joined by therapist and Bravo lover, Jana Firestone. Yana is joining me all the way from Australia, where she hosts two podcasts, The Curious Life and The Days That Follow. Today we get into Yana's background and love of Bravo, and then we get into the news on VPR/The Valley, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Real Housewives of New Jersey, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and then we get into Summer House. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so happy to have everyone here today. I hope everyone had a great week. It was Christmas, it was Boxing Day, lots of fun stuff going on. But this week, I am joined by Jana Firestone. She was actually just recently on Ryan Bailey's podcast, and I absolutely loved her take. So, welcome, Jana. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a long time fan of yours.
Of
So
mine?
this is absolutely. So
I
this
have
is
a
a
fan.
real thrill. You sure and you've got many, many fans. Come
You're
on.
so cute. Oh my gosh. I am so excited to have you here because I love people who are therapists/ Bravo lovers because I really love doing the therapeutic take on our favorite Bravo loves. So you are a therapist, you're also a podcaster, you're also a mom, but tell me a little bit more about your life, what your podcasts are, how you got into Bravo, and a little bit about your work.
Well, there's a whole world
A whole
in
lot of
that
you.
question. A
Yeah.
whole lot. Okay. So, I guess, you know a little bit about my background. It's similar to some of the work you've done.
Hmm.
I started off life, I did a psychology degree and then was working in really intense high trauma field. So I was working at the coroner's court, I was working with victims of crime, I was working in child protection, and everything I was dealing with every day was heavy, 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 heavy. And I just had to escape it.
Hmm.
And the quickest way to escape was through reality TV. And it went all the way back to, all those VH1 and MTV shows, anything that was even slightly reality based in those early days. I was obsessed. And then along came the Real Housewives of Orange County. And it wasn't streaming. And I did share this on Ryan Bailey's podcast. So apologies for repeating the story. But I discovered the show somehow, but it wasn't airing in Australia. So I found a woman in America who was burning me the I guess there were CDs because I played them on my computer
Yeah.
of the Real Housewives of Orange County and New York. And so I just thought I had this secret obsession that I had no idea. There was no real internet. There was nothing much happening back then. No social media. And I had no idea that there was this entire world of Bravo fans
Hmm.
and, fanatics that existed. And especially here in Australia, I thought I was the only person in Australia into it. And now I think it's, taken over the world. So that's kind of how my gateway drug was the reality TV shows of the early 2000s.
Right.
And I just need it to escape the heaviness of the work that I do. And I'm not really doing high intensity therapy anymore. That I'm out of trauma. I mean, it
Hmm.
occasionally comes up, but I'm not in a dedicated field in that area now. So now I work in a school 3 days a week, working with young people and their families, and I work in private practice as well.
And did you
Um,
find that you had to get out of that sort of work? It was just too much for
yeah.
you? Hmm.
Yeah, I
I get
really
that.
did. Yeah, it was enough. I think all up it was probably maybe 10 years of that sort of work.
Wow.
And, that was kind of enough. But I have to say that work has stayed with me. I still have visceral memories of almost all of those clients. They pop up into my head all the time. And, you know, I think there's only so long you can sort of do that sort of work at that level of intensity without it, without you burning out or, needing a change.
I can totally resonate with what you're saying because a lot of people, so for those who are newer listeners or for you, I used to be a sexual abuse investigator, and a lot of people will say that you just get used to it over time. And for me, I didn't feel like I got used to it. I felt like instead it sort of built up within me and created a trauma in me that sort of never went away. And so for me, over time, I needed to get out of it because it was too much for me over time, while some of my colleagues and counterparts were able to just desensitize to it, and I just never did. So I really
Yeah.
resonate with you on that.
Yeah, and I think there are a special, minority of people, and you probably saw them in those roles who are there long term, and that's their job
Hmm.
they do for their lifetime. And it's maybe 1 out of 10 people in the office who's been there forever, and
Right.
other people kind of cycle through the work. And I think that's okay. Some people, for whatever reason, for their own backgrounds, their own stories, whatever it is, that's just where they need to be. And, I was definitely really affected by the work. I still have, incredible hangovers from that
Hmm.
work. I have anxiety, I have health anxiety all the time, being hyper aware of all of the ways that we can die suddenly, for example, from working at the coroner's court, healthy young people, babies, old people, everything. And in child protection, I'm constantly overthinking and anxious about my own kids
Hmm.
and their safety and all of those things. So I think, it has an impact. And if it's not working and it's not healthy, then we need to do something else.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you have two
Yeah.
podcasts now, and are either of your podcasts about therapy or about that type of work that you used to do? Or if not, what are your two podcasts about?
So the first one is called the Curious Life podcast.
Hmm.
And I started that when I was on maternity leave with my second child, just, for something to do. And I was sort of incognito as a therapist. I didn't really want it to be about me at all. I just wanted to talk to interesting people about their stories. And there wasn't really any shape or goal with it other than seeking out stories that I found really interesting. But what I discovered over the course of, the next 5 years was that I clearly am just attracted to stories of, tragedy to triumph. And I couldn't help but put a therapeutic lens over all of those interviews. And so I eventually just had to kind of, own the fact that, yeah, look, I am a therapist. This is what I do in my real job. And I just love talking to people. And it ended up being a lot of Australian celebrities, basically, about their really interesting, stories of overcoming and becoming whatever it is that they are today. But then the reality in the pop culture world kept bleeding in. So, for example, I've had Ryan Bailey on my
Hmm.
podcast at the height of Scandival. We needed to unpack that together. I've had Chris Franjola, who's a
Hmm.
comedian in the States. I've had him on twice just to have some comedic relief, talking
Yes,
about some
exactly.
pop culture stuff. And, he's so funny and easy to talk to. He had some great, like, Meghan Markle stories that was, very of interest at the time. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. But last year, the podcast kind of slowed down a little bit because I was releasing my second book, Plot Twist, and I just couldn't do everything all at once. So for 2025, there'll be more interviews. I think there's probably going to be more of a pop culture, at least a more regular pop culture offering, and some of those media stories that have that more, edge of therapy, not therapy, but looking at it from that therapeutic lens of, how people get to where they are today so that we can all kind of take something from that. And the other podcast is just kind of a limited series called The Days That Follow, which is a grief recovery podcast. So, for those who don't know anything about my story, my mum died suddenly when I was 21. And I worked obviously in grief and trauma for a long time. And then there were all these themes coming out of the interviews on The Curious Life that seemed to be all about grief in some form. And I just wanted to kind of honor that and give a space for that because most of the contact I would get from listeners would be around their stories of grief as
Hmm.
well, and not always about death. Sometimes it's about the end of a relationship or a loss of identity or, complex family dynamics. And there's just grief in everyday living. And I just wanted there to be a place for us to kind of share those stories and build a little community around the harder stuff in
Right.
life that doesn't always get talked about.
Hmm. I like that
Yeah.
idea. You have one about grief and one about sort of triumph, right? So it's sort of two
Yeah.
ends of the spectrum, and you're sort of covering it all. I love that. Very, very
Yeah.
cool.
One
Well,
of those
Sorry, go
Silly
ahead.
people. It's just one of those silly people that has to fill in every single space in the day, which I'm working on.
No, I totally get it. And you fill it in such a great way. I mean, you've got your family life, you've got your two podcasts, you've got your books, you've got your love of reality TV. To me, you seem to have a very full and rich life. And I just want to delve into it more. I want to listen to your podcast. I want to read your books. You have this voice and this way about you that really makes people want to listen to you. So I really do thank you for being
Oh,
here today.
that is so generous. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Well, do you want to talk some pop culture?
Please bring it
Okay.
on.
Well, we're going to start with Vanderpump Rules and the Valley stories today. So,
Okay.
congratulations is in order to Nia Sanchez and Danny Bucco, who are pregnant with their fourth child. Everyone's first reaction was that an accident? And that wasn't mine. I think that's kind of rude, but good for them. I mean, they are amazing parents. They are beautiful. So you know that this child is going to come out looking like, either one of them is fine by me. But what were your thoughts when you heard that Nia was having a fourth? Four under four.
Yes. 4 under 4. Yep. Danny's gonna love using that line. Look, I had a mixed feeling about it. Obviously, thrilled, another baby. It's such a blessing, and they have beautiful kids, and they are a beautiful family. Everything you said. But obviously, Nia was very vocal about her experience with postnatal depression, or I guess postpartum, it's called in America.
You guys call it
And
postnatal?
yeah,
Okay,
postnatal. Yeah, so we have prenatal and postnatal here, but it's the same thing.
right.
And so obviously I just had a little bit of concern there about, we know that the risk of that increases when you've had any experience of mental illness or depression or postnatal issues in the past.
Hmm.
I'm sure she has plenty of support. She's got, their relationship seems really strong. She's, I think speaking out probably gave her a lot of confidence and I don't think she needs my judgment when this is already, I'm sure, very much in the front of her mind. And just because you've had postpartum or postnatal depression in the past doesn't guarantee you're going to have it again. But my as a mum, I've got three young boys. Like the thought of a fourth gives me terrible anxiety. I wouldn't have the bandwidth, the energy, the space to love. I mean, of course, I would love it, but I wouldn't be able to give that child everything it needs, and all my kids an equal amount of time and energy because I would just be so exhausted. And
Hmm.
I think anyone who has lots of kids, I take my hat off to you. I think it's incredible. But I worried a little bit.
Hmm.
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think we actually don't know a lot about her, which is so interesting because my first thought was, well, does she want a big family? And we don't even know that because we know so little about her from the show. They didn't really delve into their family. We
Yeah.
know they're religious, so I thought, okay, maybe it's that. But I didn't listen to her podcast, but one of my friends, colleagues, let's call them, another content creator, listened to Hold My Crown, and apparently, the pull-out method didn't work. Which, by the way, it never does, or sometimes does. But I just hate that people use this as an actual birth control method because it's not a thing. Every person
Hmm.
who I know who has gotten pregnant by accident got pregnant that way. So I just want to put that out there as a PSA. Not a thing, not a thing. But anyway, I worry for her a little bit too. I mean, at least, and you tell me because I'm not a mom and I'm not someone who knows much about postpartum or postnatal depression, but would you say that after you've been through it, you would then, if you were to go through it again, you would be able to recognize the signs maybe more readily than if you hadn't been through it, and so maybe she may have an easier time because she would recognize the signs more readily?
Well, yeah, she might be quicker to access help. But my guess would be she would be working closely with her therapist throughout the pregnancy,
That would make sense.
um, in
Get
order
ahead
to
of it.
prepare for, yeah, exactly. And I mean, the unknown quantity there is the hormones. After you've had a baby, your hormones are wildly out of control. And, not just in the days or the weeks, but really for 2 years after having a child
Wow.
your hormones really don't settle back down to normal for 2 years. And I noticed that with my skin, weight, my rage is so much
Your
quicker and
rage.
higher. Oh, yeah, huge rage. Like impatience with the
Yeah.
kids it feels much more out of control in those 2 years. but I didn't even someone like me who works in this field, I didn't necessarily recognize that that was a hormonal thing for me in those
Hmm.
2 years. But now that my youngest is almost 3, the last year has been completely different. I feel way more in control of myself and feel much more back in my body and like my
Right.
own self again. So that's the thing that you sort of need. It's not just like she's got to get past a window in the first couple of weeks or months, it's something
Right.
that can pop up at any time.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
scary, but it's like if that's what you want. I mean, I remember seeing this a lot in Teen Mom. I don't know if you were an avid Teen Mom
Yes.
watcher back in the day.
Obsessed.
Caitlin
Yeah.
and Tyler, Caitlin went
Yes.
through horrible postpartum over and over again with her different children to the point where it created a trauma in her that um, she also experienced many other types of trauma and ended up going to
Yeah.
get help for that. But her going through postpartum was considered a trauma in addition to
Mm,
giving up a child for adoption, in addition to having an alcoholic mother, just like any other trauma. But at the
yeah.
same time, you go through that stage of like, okay, I want to have another kid, but I'm scared this is going to happen to me again. What's going to happen to my mental health, right? And it sucks
Yeah.
that you even have to put that in your brain of like, we want another kid and we may be mentally ready, we may be financially ready, we may have all the support in the world, but what we can't guarantee is how my mental health is going to react to it, right? And that's
Yeah.
such a scary thing that you have to even put in your mind when you want to make a decision about having a child. That
Absolutely.
really,
And
ugh.
that, yeah, it's, and as you know, with anxiety, so much of it is created in anticipation of
Yes.
of that anxiety. And I, personally live with that myself. And, I know that there will be certain situations where I'm like, oh, for example, driving on highways became a thing for me
Oh,
during
yeah.
COVID. Oh, could not go more than I don't know what the conversion to miles is, but for me, going more than like 60 kilometers an hour was a huge spike in anxiety. So I knew that I would have this anxiety in the lead up to having to go on a specific road. So it's a similar kind of thing. If you're
Hmm.
anticipating becoming anxious or worrying that you're going to spiral into, a mental health crisis, it's really, a huge problem. But if you're on top of it and you're aware that it's something that may affect you, having access to support is the number one thing. And you can jump out of it. There is medication you can take. Even when you're pregnant, there is
Hmm.
medication that's safe for you to take for anxiety and depression and all of the things that might be, happening at the time.
Well, in terms of support, actually, it's great that you mentioned that because Kristen Doty will be pregnant at the same time as her. So even though
Yes.
Nia already has three small children, she will still be pregnant at the same time as Kristen. So it'll be nice for them to share that
Yeah.
together because, there was the pregnancy pact of 2018 or 2020 or whatever year it
Yes.
was with Ocean and Cruz and Hartford. And, Kristen wasn't a
Yep.
part of that. So at least Kristen and Nia can have that together. So I'm
I
happy
think
for her for
Scheana,
that.
I think Sheena's going to be
Oh,
devastated
right,
that she
Sheena.
left out.
I forgot about Summer
You
Moon.
forgot Summer Moon. Oh my God, what about Sheena?
Don't worry, I'm very sure Sheena doesn't listen to this podcast. Okay, well, speaking of Sheena, let's speak about Katie because we're not going to talk about Sheena. So, Katie Maloney and her boyfriend spent Christmas with her family. So, it was like her mom, her brothers, her niece and nephew, and everything. And so, we've heard about this guy, this Nick Martin from this band. I forget what it's called even now.
Mm,
Sleeping with Sirens, I think is the name of the band.
yeah.
So, we haven't heard good things about him. We hear he's kind of a cheater and I don't know, he used to be married, maybe is still married. Here's the thing. I just really want to support Katie. Like, I think she's smart enough to know what's happening here because she has responded to some people in the DMs when they were initially outed as being a couple. And she was like, dating is treacherous. I hear you, girl. So she's aware. So she's
Mhm.
making her own choices. And, like, yeah, I just want her to be happy. And if this is it, then I just want to root her on because she's been single for a long time. And not that being single, or sorry, not that dating equates to being happy, because it doesn't, because I've been single for a really long time and I'm happy as a clam. But if that's what she wants to be happy, and if this is it, I just want that for her. She had such a
Yeah,
shitty few years
totally.
and
Totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, you don't want it to fall over. You don't want the rumors to be true. But if she's aware of it and she's, forging ahead, then I guess all we can do is be happy for it, you know? But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, she's had some weird choices. You know, what was Satchel?
Oh my God, Satchel. I forgot about Satchel. There were these couple of things that she said, or that Lala said, that not everybody necessarily picked up on, but I did, where either Lala said it or she said that she didn't expect that this is where she would be at this stage in her life. Or there's this one scene that was cut where you see this little piece of her saying, I was so in love with so and so, and it didn't turn out to be what I thought. So I think there's this piece that we've missed about her over the last few years of just random guys that she's dated that we didn't get to know much about because they didn't stick around. And I just feel like I just want her to have her time. I don't know if this is the guy and this is the time,
Mm,
but I don't know. I just don't want Lala to be right. I just,
I
I want
know.
her to just be happy. I don't want her to see Katie or to treat Katie as like this lonely, sad woman because she doesn't have a boyfriend, because that's sort of the implication that she had made prior. So again,
Yes.
if Katie is happy, then I am happy.
Exactly. And by the way, Lala's been single for how long now? Like oh God, I have so many thoughts about her. She
Okay, go
drives
ahead.
me
We don't actually have any news about her, but if there's
insane.
something you want to say, go for it.
Well,
Because we're
you
in the
know what?
Vanderpump section.
We're in the Vanderpump section. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, you talked about this on some previous episodes, in response to the James Kennedy stuff,
right. So why don't
where
you
she
address
went on
that?
that. Yeah, so she went on the Amazon Live
Right.
and, didn't have an opinion on other people's relationships. And that I feel like is the perfect example of her constant hypocrisy, which absolutely makes me crazy. Like, your entire life, your entire fortune, your entire career has been based on you having an opinion on other people's lives, and to not have an opinion when it really matters, and to promote yourself as a girl's girl, which we all know as an audience she's not. She's just out for herself, and we completely get that. But her whole Amazon Live career has been about having opinions about everyone else. And she rewrites history week after week. Every single podcast she goes on, she's got a completely new story that she's convinced herself was truth and fact. And I just can't stand the constant hypocrisy. And I just want her to go away. I don't want her actually commenting on anyone anymore. I don't want to see her on the Valley. I'm really annoyed that she's going to be there muddying the waters and thinking she's the queen of the show. And the show was beautiful without her. I
Hmm.
mean, beautiful is probably a wrong
Beautiful.
word. It was messy as
It
hell,
was gorgeous,
but
darling.
gorgeous, just so lovely. But I'm just
Yeah.
and
You
just
know what?
infuriating.
I want to add something about this Lala thing and why she didn't say anything about James. So, what she said was, once you get older, you really only care about what's going on with you and your family. But I just want to point something out, just for argument's sake. She will never say anything negative about James because she carries a lot of shame with her because of her time as an alcoholic. And because of that, she feels like she shares this connection with James because of it, because they were both alcoholics. They were also friends during a period of time where she had no other friends. He was sort of her rock, her only person. And again, I'm no therapist and I've never even met her, but having studied her as deeply as I feel I have, I feel that she carries this deep, deep resentment and shame and guilt deep, deep within her about all the things that she did while she was an alcoholic. So,
Mm.
if this incident involving James does involve his sobriety, which we do believe it does, I feel like she won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Even going forward, if anything happens in the future regarding James and sobriety, she won't touch it with a 10-foot pole just because she feels that just this kinship to him where he can do no wrong because she wants to be forgiven for all the things that she did wrong, or at least not forgiven, but at least make it all go into a ball and go away in that same sort of way. Does that make sense?
Mm. I totally hear what you're saying, but I feel like she's worn her sobriety as, or her previous battles with substances or whatever, alcohol, as almost a badge of honor. Like she's talked about how like hardcore she was, and, all the shit she did when she was fucked up, and, almost proud of it,
Hmm.
or it gives her some cred. I'm all for her sobriety. Don't get me wrong, and I
Oh,
do
I
think
wasn't
it's
defending
real.
her, by the
And
way. It was
no,
just a
no, no.
thought.
Yeah, no, which I
Definitely
think
not defending her.
no, but I think you're right. But I also wonder if it's just sort of convenient, or I don't know, maybe it's because it's a legal situation that she's as you mentioned on your earlier podcast, that perhaps they've been advised not to say anything because it is an active, open case at the moment. There's no conclusion to it. But
It was just a
yeah, I
weird
just,
thing she said. Fine, then don't say anything.
yeah,
Don't say, well, I don't care about stuff like that because as you get older,
yes,
you only care about your own family, not domestic violence
exactly.
involving other people, you know? You only care about the
Exactly.
domestic violence involving the people living in your house.
Exactly. Exactly. Just say, you know what? It's a open legal case at the moment. I can't talk about it right now. One day I may have some thoughts to share with you, but not now. Like Kristen, she made a perfect
Exactly.
statement.
Well,
Yeah.
Scheana did finally make a statement on shenanigans, so I'm
Yes.
actually just going to play that now. It's kind of long, but I want to play the whole clip because everybody was waiting to hear from Scheana. So let's hear what Scheana had to say.
Why haven't you spoken about James and Allie and condoned his actions or helped Allie? I think they mean condemned. Have you spoken with James? Are you a part of his support system? You speak on everything VPR, so why not James? Do you not consider Allie a friend? Did you ever? Why is no one from VPR addressing James's arrest? What's the truth about James and the abuse allegations? Do you feel sympathy for Raquel now that James was arrested? How are you supporting Allie during this time? Did Allie move out of James's house? What do you think of James taking time away to focus on himself? Etc. 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 So I've seen the comments from all of you asking why I haven't spoke out about this. So first off, I want to say I was respecting Allie's privacy as she requested, and I didn't want to add to any headlines because she's going through enough right now. So I wasn't going to say anything on the podcast, but I now see how that's coming off by staying silent. So I have spoken to Allie. I check in with her often. I always have, but I know it seems like if I stay silent, y'all somehow think I support his behavior, which I absolutely do not. Obviously, I was very close with Raquel for years. And while she always told me that James was never physically abusive, as we all know, abuse isn't limited to just physical. And ultimately, it led to her exiting that relationship. And I had a lot of empathy for her, which is why Brock helped move her out and move her in with us at the time. You know, I wanted to do anything I could to help and give her a safe space. I do hope that James views this as a rock bottom moment and is serious about than just committing to a healing plan versus just seeing this as something that's, gonna like ruin the world tour or residency or whatever. I've noticed his name has been taken off of certain shows, and that is a direct consequence to his actions. And, he needs to get help, and not just to prevent Allie or some other girl from being subjected to abusive behavior in the future, but to give himself a chance to live life with healthy relationships. And I know he wants those things for himself, and he needs to give himself the proper tools to deal with his trauma that doesn't involve projecting it onto others. Like I said at the beginning of this, I've just been hesitant to speak publicly on these topics because I feel like no matter what my intentions, I don't always get it right when I'm trying to navigate a very sensitive and serious subject matter. And that's why I have my cards today, because I wanted to make sure I'm saying everything I want to say without just rambling. But look, also, I want to keep the line of communication and support open to Allie. I want her to know that she is supported. I don't want to, say something that then puts her in a position where it's like she has to choose between a friendship or a relationship. And I just don't want there to be one less mechanism of support for her. So that's just only going to make things harder. And to not make this about me, but to just put in perspective, I know most of you watched season 9, and it was revealed that my husband had, made some bad choices in his early 20s. And thankfully, he's not the same person he was, and he continues to work on himself. If he was the same person, I wouldn't have married him. He's an incredible partner and father, and he's made some mistakes, but he's grown. He's learned from his past, and I thought James had too. Hopefully now he finally will. But the way I think about it, like with Brock and with, just people in general, it's like if we aren't capable of change, then why even bother?
So quite the statement.
Mm.
I actually really thought there was a piece of that was very important, where she said, Allie asked me not to say anything. That was one part. And the other part is that she doesn't want to lose that line of communication to Allie. So while us as the fandom and the public have been sort of coming at everyone being like, why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you saying anything? I think it's really also important to remember that Scheana and possibly Lala don't want to lose that connection to Ali, because if they come out and condemn James or condemn the situation, Ali could cut them off. And, then it's just James and Ali together. And then she has no support and help, right? Like if Lala were to come out and say, James is the devil, I hate him forever. Remember, Ali hasn't actually left James yet, if she will at
Mm-hmm.
all. We don't even know, right? So that could actually just push her closer and closer to him. So, as much as we don't love Scheana, I actually really do like what she said here, and I think it made a lot of sense. One, that she was respecting Ali's wishes, and two, that she doesn't want to sever that tie to Ali in such a careful time.
Yeah, yeah, I think you nailed that because, as we know, it can take so many times for somebody to leave a violent relationship. And this may not be the moment that Ali leaves. And, I think that's a very important piece for anyone listening who might be in that situation or have someone they love in that situation, that as much as you may want to shout it from the rooftops what an asshole this guy is and you need to get out and all of those things, that's not always the safest option.
Right.
But, on a lighter note, on a scale from, 0 to Scheana, it was really, maybe only about a 5 on the Scheana scale, where it wasn't actually all about her. But I thought she did so well until kind of the last third of that piece where she just can't help but be a male apologist. She's always kind of defending and excusing the behavior. It didn't need to be about Brock in that moment. It didn't need to be about James's potential for change. It just needed to be in this moment. I think if she'd left it at, I'm here for Ali and it's really sad and really disappointing and, that's kind of it, it might have been a bit stronger.
I think it might have been about Brock because Scheana is one to be in the comments, and people were asking
Mm,
about Brock in the comments. People were like, well,
got
she's
it.
married to someone who, was an assaulter or etc.
Yes,
So
very good
because
point.
we know she's
Yeah,
up in the comments, that's why
yeah.
I sort of expected her to say something about Brock as well,
Mhm.
because I saw that in the comments. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I avoid Sheena's section of the internet now. I need a break from Scheana,
Her mother needs a break because it's her mom that does it. Her mom will like follow all these accounts and then tell her what's in the comments and what's being said about her. And she's got to stop doing
Mhm.
that for Sheena's mental health. Like, come on.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's move
Yeah.
on to the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, to someone that isn't actually even on that show, our friend Teddi Joe. So, Teddi Joe Mellencamp posted a picture of her and Edwin. It's like a really old throwback. It looks like it's from like Blink 182 sort of days. And she
Yes.
wrote, 16 years ago, me and Edwin met. I will forever be grateful for that night at Coco DeVille. I would never have known I wanted kids until meeting my amazing stepdaughter, Isabella. My love for her changed my life, and 5 years later came Slate, then Cruz, then our miracle baby Dove in 2020. I may be far from perfect, but being a mother has been the greatest gift you could ever have given me. Thank you always and forever. So I'm not sure what this is. Is this just the anniversary of the day they met? Like, I'm not sure what this is about, right? Like,
Yes.
thank you.
I know. Oh, isn't she just? I mean, I know I was in the comments in that little section
Wait,
too.
what did you say?
Well, I was reading all the comments,
Okay.
maybe just on the Bravo pages about it, but it's just, she is insufferable, And everybody in the comments was like, well, you clearly weren't thinking about your own kids when you had the affair with your daughter's horse trainer, and you clearly weren't thinking about his kids. Like, it's so recent, this revelation, I mean, so many things. I saw a clip of her and Tamara interviewing Shep. By the way, I don't
hmm
listen to that podcast. I don't want to support either of those people. So it doesn't matter who they have on as a guest. I'm not listening.
I do
But
like
I
their
see the clips.
podcast. I know, but I do like it is a good podcast. I know.
Oh my God, I can't deal. I can't deal. Okay, but each to their own. We need all different people in this planet. Okay.
Well, it's my
Um,
job, quote unquote, as a content creator,
True.
because if they interview someone interesting, then I have to quote
You
it,
need to.
right? So, yeah,
Perfect. Yep. I
unfortunately.
totally get that. I get that. Have you listened to the Shep episode yet?
No, and I
Or
wasn't going to because Shep typically isn't very good in interviews. He rambles and rambles and
yeah.
rambles, so I didn't expect it to be that juicy, was it?
I don't know. What I saw
Okay.
from the clip that they posted was, her Teddy asking Shep, like, who's the biggest liar? And she's sitting there, like, in a room with Tamra, And she's just come out with this, or someone came out with this big affair news about her. Like, wouldn't you think you would be going out of your way to avoid any comparison to your own life? She just seems to have zero self-awareness.
I wonder, I just had this thought today. What if this has actually been going on for a lot longer than we think? Potentially. So she's over it. So she's like, yeah, I've been having this affair for years. You guys are just catching up. You guys just found out. So maybe to her, this is like no big deal because it's like been going on for such a long time. And
Yes.
even Edwin has known about it for a long time. So maybe that's why like no one on their end thinks this is that big a deal. Just a
Yeah,
thought.
you could
I
be
mean,
right. I love that.
in the horse
Yeah.
community have been all up about this and have been messaging content creators about this. So I'm sure everybody knows the exact date of, the exact moment this happened. But
Yes.
doesn't it sort of just feel like maybe it's been going on for such a long time, or that Teddy and Edwin have been like living separate lives for such a long time that they don't really seem to
Yeah.
care? Because she was out hanging out with the horse trainer out in public a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
So acting
Yeah.
like no care in the world, right? So I don't know. It's just a thought. Just a
Yeah.
thought.
Well, I guess the benchmark for the timeline would be how old his youngest child is. Because that was the rumor, right? That his wife was in labor
Right.
when they were out of town together. True or not, I don't know, but that might be. If this is a baby who's like, a few months old, there we go. But if it could be in school already, who knows?
And what's funny is that she's like, I don't want to like share my private life with you guys, so I'm not going to tell you what happened, but here's a picture of me and Edwin from 16 years ago, and I'm going to leave the comments on for you guys to like go crazy, right? Like,
Yes,
I just can't.
absolutely.
I can't keep
No,
track.
and I'm terrified to think we're going to see her on Beverly Hills next year or next season because now she's living with Kyle. You know, like,
I mean, she lives there part-time because I guess how they work it is the kids live in the house, and then Edwin goes somewhere on his off days, and Teddy will stay in Kyle's like a glam room on her off days. But I mean, I don't know if they've mentioned her like in the first four episodes, and then there's
yeah,
this, right? So I could see it being a possibility, but let's just think about this for a second. The reason we didn't want her is because she's boring. Is she though? Right? Like she doesn't seem all that boring to me these days. So I'm not saying I like her because I don't like her, but would I want to see her on TV? Maybe. Maybe. Like, aren't you sort of
wow.
interested in some of this? Like even in a
It,
clusterfuck sort of way. Like even in a like dunce cap sort of way. Like in a funny
I,
sort of
I
like
mean, I hear what you're saying because, okay, this is a controversial take and I'm leaping around here, but I would almost keep Alexis Bellino on OC because she's so outrageously ridiculous and like all the bad things. I can watch that in a clusterfuck kind of way. And I'd get rid of Tamara because she's just evil to me and just makes and feels so toxic and disgusting. I can't do it anymore. So I would actually swap them and watch Alexis for all those reasons, for all the reasons we don't want her on screen. I would be curious to see how much she fucks the rest of the shit up for the next season.
interesting.
But but with Teddy, I don't know. It's not, as you say, it's not that she's boring. She's got stuff going on and she inserts herself everywhere and she's got a lot of opinions. She's completely different to the girl we saw on the first season of Beverly Hills where she was literally wallpaper and just had
Hmm.
nothing going on. Um, but I still have no interest in her. I don't know what it is. It's like it's like she's a tryhard,
But we don't,
She's just
yeah. And if we don't care, that's a big deal, right? Because if you don't care about
yeah,
your characters, then you're not going to watch them on TV. So that makes complete
yeah,
sense. So I think that's what
yeah.
it is. I think we just don't care to know,
Yeah. And
right?
I think because we can all feel how desperately she wants it,
And
so
that just,
that's
ugh.
almost, yeah, it's almost fed the negativity around her. But I mean, if she's on the show, I will begrudgingly watch it and hate watch her scenes.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, let's move on to Bravo's Hot Mic podcast last week, where they had Mauricio Umansky and PK. First of all, I thought it was hilarious that the men were on together. I thought it was very like Schwartz and Sandoval coded, like they can't do an interview
Yes.
without each other. Like, why do you think they did it together? I just thought that was odd.
Yeah, it was really strange. But I feel like PK really sort of took over. It was
Hmm.
largely about him.
Hmm.
Um, Mo was just kind of like he sounded quite reasonable and sensible. PK sounded like he had a lot to say,
And a lot of
He
anger.
and this right of reply message that he
Hmm.
feels like he doesn't have as the show's airing, even though he's got the
Right.
platform and he's doing interviews. Um, he repeatedly talked about how much Dorit has changed
Right.
and, felt very maligned by that, But then another thought that came to me as I was listening to it was, I wonder if actually he has happily moved on and he has got someone else, and
Oh, wait,
maybe he's
does he? I
kind of
didn't know that.
well, I started getting this vibe because he
Okay.
was sort of talking about, no, 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 we're definitely not working towards getting back together. We're working on being the best co-parents we can be. And, things might change when she meets someone or when I meet someone. And I was like, I'm wondering about this. And maybe
Yeah.
he's really making a big thing about them not getting back together because the girl might be listening to the interview,
Fair enough.
you know? But his response was completely different to Mauricio's response. He was talking about her best friends and how Kyle never changed with all the money and the fame. And, they are just like a unit for life. And PK's response was the complete opposite.
Right.
So, but yeah, very Schwartz and Sandy, you nailed that with them being on there together.
It's funny because, I mean, what Mo was saying makes complete sense, right? People do change, people do grow and
Yeah.
change. But what he's saying is, people grow and change, and Kyle didn't happen to have changed in terms of the fame. But what PK is saying is, no, you're supposed to grow and change together. And we didn't do that
Mhm.
together. And therefore she changed, and therefore our marriage doesn't work. And it was just sort of
Yeah.
like, but I realized something. We actually didn't know her prior to them being married. So I
Yeah.
actually don't know if she changed. I don't know if the show changed her. I don't know if fame changed her because we only got to know her as she started on the show, right? So we can't,
Yeah.
as much as I want to argue with him on that, I can't really. But for
Yeah.
him to say, there was this sad comment where Alex Baskin says, would you have done the show now? Do you regret doing the show? And he says, yeah, because I lost the love of my life. And Alex
Yeah.
Baskin was like, okay, well, then just go get her then, right? In so
Yeah.
many words. And it's sort of like, it's just been too far gone, was sort of his point, I
Mm.
guess. But I'm
Yeah,
really
that was
curious.
sad.
Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts, though, on he had a lot of disdain towards Dorit for calling him a full-blown alcoholic and for characterizing his alcoholism in such a way. And,
Mm.
he was talking about how alcoholism is the symptom, not the cause. And just from a therapeutic perspective, I'm just so curious your thoughts in the way that she characterized his problem.
Yeah, I thought it did feel a little bit unfair the way that she was just kind of blasting that as the key problem, because I think even just as viewers we could see there was a lot of other stuff going on. They didn't seem to be a partnership as
Hmm.
they might have been in the earlier years for
Right.
a while, and I mean, I guess I'm thinking two things. One, I can see some of the ways that Dorit has changed. I mean, the obsession with the way that she looks, the fashion, I don't feel like that was as intense in the first couple of
That
seasons.
makes sense.
And, maybe there is this whole new version of her that, maybe caused him to escalate the drinking. I don't know. But, it is an illness. And anyone who has had anyone in their lives who struggles with sobriety and with addiction knows that you've got to be really sensitive to that. And there was just no careful handling. It was almost, and I don't even feel like it was aggressive from her. It just almost was like blind. She's
Hmm.
just throwing it out there. Well, yeah, PK's a full-blown alcoholic, so now we're not together. And by the way, Kyle, blah blah blah. Like it was so almost just not even a huge big deal. It was just this throwaway comment that she just kept, and maybe she'd convinced herself that that was going to be her story
Yeah, it
because
seems that way.
it's easier to just like, let's just make it about that. I'm not going to
Hmm.
sit down and go into detail about every single element of the relationship that's fallen away. And sometimes it is really hard to dissect a relationship breakdown, especially in the aftermath of it. But I suspect it has been going on a lot longer. And perhaps
For
all of this
sure.
time, that he's been in the UK, it's really almost been a trial separation, whether they've, outwardly named that or not.
Yeah.
So almost like you were saying with Teddi, I wonder if, yeah, this has been going on for much longer. So she is almost like whatever about it, like, yeah, he gets an alcoholic and we're broken up. So anyway, back to how I feel about you, Kyle. You know?
Yeah, I mean, like, what do you see for the future for PK and Dorit? Because I don't see from either of them any sort of feelings towards whether it would make them upset or not if they didn't get back together. I just don't feel anything from them.
No, if anything, I felt more for Kyle sitting on
Right.
the couch with Mo when she realized that, that relationship was moving in another direction. And when he's talking about all the things like that intimate idea of him buying his own bed sheets. And then it's a wound in itself, thinking about, wow, okay, I'm not that person in his life anymore on so
Right.
many levels. And you could sort of see that hurt in her. And I'm not a Kyle stan by any means, but I could just really feel something. I felt sad for them both in that moment.
Mm,
But you're right. There's no feeling in the Dorit and PK scenes,
right.
and you know, PK says the things like she's the love of my life and I lost her and she changed and all of those things. But even in saying those things, I don't feel the hurt and the sadness. Again, it just feels like matter of fact.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure. I don't see any great big reconciliation anytime soon.
I agree. And I feel like if we hear that they get divorced, we'll just be like, okay,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
expected, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like we won't be shocked. Well,
No.
moving on to Kim Richards, there's another sad story about her in the news,
Mm.
and I'm always just feeling for our poor Kim Richards. But this is the story that came out on December 24th, so Christmas Eve, on TMZ. It says Kim Richards made an unusual call to the police over the weekend, which prompted cops to respond and perform an evaluation on Kim, TMZ has learned. Law enforcement sources tell TMZ the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills alum was visited by LAPD on Sunday afternoon at a house owned by her sister, Kyle Richards. Cops say Kim told police someone had taken her cat only to return it before she began rambling about ongoing issues with Kyle. I wonder if that's true or that's just TMZ.
Mm.
This behavior set off alarm bells for officers at the scene who called the mental health team to come and evaluate the 60-year-old. This behavior set off alarm bells. Oh, sorry, that was the same part. After speaking with Richards, we're told the mental health evaluation team determined Kim did not meet the criteria for an involuntary hold because they felt she didn't represent a harm to herself or others. Paramedics were also dispatched to Richards' residence but departed shortly after, and no one required medical transport. We're told cops took no further action regarding the cat complaint. We broke the story. Kim was put on a psych hold back in September after sources told us cops were called to an LA area Hilton hotel. We're told Kim was incoherent when officers arrived, but she refused to leave and when asked and was ultimately put on a 5150 hold. So, I mean, we've been hearing these kinds of stories about Kim Richards for years. I feel like we don't hear them in as much depth in recent years because she's not on the show. I'm glad that she wasn't taken and wasn't put under a hold. I'm wondering what the situation with the cat was. But I mean, it's another one of these situations where I just want the best for Kim. I
Mm.
hope that she gets the proper help that she needs. I feel like she suffers both from mental health issues and alcoholism. And, I feel like we've seen her family try to help her. We've seen them try the tough love approach. And I don't know. I feel like there's some people that just go through this throughout their entire lives.
Yeah, it is cyclical and
Cyclical, exactly.
yeah, and it's so this story is so reminiscent of those early years of Beverly Hills and you just I guess here in Australia, it's really hard to get people, on those kinds of holds as well, unless they're a risk to themselves or to
Hmm.
somebody else. But
Right,
if she's just, relapsed and is drinking and kind of a bit out of control, unfortunately, there's nothing anyone can really do about that
right,
unless she's volunteering for help. So, I mean, I feel for her. I feel for her kids. I feel for her sisters, the whole family going through this so publicly over and over and over again. And was it this year? I feel like it was only a couple of months ago, maybe, where there was a story that came out that Kathy and Kyle had kind of cut ties with her and were throwing her out of Kyle's house, or there was this whole kind of messy thing, and they're just trying to do what's best for her, quote unquote. And so it sounds like maybe there's been an issue for a while, and it's clearly still going.
And within that family, the Hiltons Richards, they like to keep things hush hush, right? So,
Yeah.
like I said, with them not, or with Kim not being on the show, and like you said, there were these stories earlier this year, but we won't know much about it because they're probably just trying to keep it under wraps because they just don't want Kim and her issues out there in the public, which is completely understandable. I just hope that she has the support that she needs. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
hard to say that now, though, given how many years this is ongoing, because when I say that, my thoughts are going to sometimes, though, family just has to stop supporting you and give you that tough
Mhm.
love in order for you to get better. But it sounds like she's living in one of Kyle's homes. So at least there's that. At least she has
Yeah.
a place to live. She has her beautiful children, and hopefully they're still supporting her and she just has the people that she needs around her. I just worry for
Yeah.
her long
I
term, you
know
know?
it's so sad. Did you hear rumors swirling that she was going to be on this season? I felt like I heard something before
Did
the
you?
season started airing that we might see her pop up.
I hope so. I didn't
Um,
hear that. But you know what I was
okay.
thinking of doing? I don't know if you saw my episode that came out today. I'm doing this new series called Be True Hollywood Story. Thank you.
Yes.
So
Very
today I did,
exciting.
yeah, so today I did Stassi Schroeder, but I was actually thinking of doing Kim Richards next because she has such an interesting history, not just in terms of her mental health and her alcoholism, but she was an actress, a very
Yeah.
successful actress as a child, right? So I think she has a very, very rich history and also has such an interesting family as well. So I think that
Yes.
would be a fun one.
Absolutely. Please do that one.
Okay,
It'd be
next weekend.
amazing. Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to the Real Housewives of New Jersey. And Dolores Catania, whose birthday is today, happy birthday, Dolores. There was an article
Okay.
that came out in People where she had a little bit to say about what's going on with New Jersey. So I will just read this article. It says, "We didn't film last season, so we're not coming back. We're not going to be airing in January or February," the 53-year-old reality star tells People while discussing her recent Renuvian skin tightening procedure on her knees. Of course, I'd look forward to seeing my cast come back on the screen and even come back to a film, but they made a mess. I'm a little mad that everybody couldn't get it together, I really am. On my way to that finale, I spoke to a therapist and asked her for some tips on going in and speaking to the women. I wrote it down in the car on the way there. And no matter what I did, on and off camera, nothing helped, Catania recalls. You could see I was defeated. I sat there and I knew you wouldn't be seeing us for a while. I saw it coming. Catania believes the New Jersey cast has veered off course compared to the Real Housewives. Catania believes that the New Jersey cast has veered off course compared to other Real Housewives franchises. We effing lost something along the way, she says. I'm looking at Salt Lake City and I'm looking at Beverly Hills, and they fight, but they don't go for the jugular. They're not hitting below the belt. They agree to disagree and move on. She adds, "We've traveled the world together, we've cried together, we fought together. You have to move on, otherwise, you'll have no one in your life. Now we have no one. So what do you think? Do you think a full recast works? I'm not sure." While Catania is concerned about the show's future, she remains hopeful that the current cast will return for season 15. Not just for themselves, but for the fans as well. "We've let them into our homes and we've been a part of their lives," she says. "I don't call them fans, I call them friends. They're the reasons that we came as far as we did." And despite the challenges the cast faced in season 14, Catania believes that they will make it work if they return. "I know I would. I think that given some time for things to cool down, maybe they would try to do that too," she says. "It's time to put egos aside. You don't throw something away like this. We had great ratings, we did well, we just have to learn how to act. That is what life is about. It's about fighting and making up." I have actually a lot of
Mm.
thoughts about that. It's
All
about
right, go.
fighting and making up. I mean, to a limit, right? I mean, life is not about being friends with people to an extent that it affects your mental health, right? That is not what
Yeah.
life is about. Because if we go back to that Bravo's Hot Mic, Maurizio said something very interesting. He's like, in real life, if you fight with someone, you tell them to fuck off, you never see them again. You don't have to hang out with them 5 minutes later, right? So if
Yeah.
you're at a point in your friendship or in your relationship with someone where you hate their guts and you're telling them to fuck off and you never want to see them again, how are you supposed to go on a cast trip and have dinner with them tomorrow night, right? Like it's, you know?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree with Dolores on like, let's just act right, let's kiss
Hmm.
and make up. I don't think this group of people can kiss and make up.
No, I agree. I agree. And I know you hung out with Teresa lately,
I just took a
so
picture and left. It's no big deal. They so
yeah,
rarely come
but
to Toronto, so whenever there's a Bravo Lab here, I go to the event, I
of
take my picture.
course, completely understand. And when Countess Luann, who by the way, I'm wearing her t-shirt today,
Very cool. Be
just for
cool. Don't be all
you.
uncool.
That's right.
Love it.
Um, yeah, I wore it for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I when she's here in Australia, I will absolutely be going to see her. But I just feel like Teresa is a personality or and I say this without my therapist hat on. Let me just clarify. This is just me being a judgmental reality TV watcher. I actually don't feel like she has the emotional intelligence to actually be able to do that. I don't think she can temper her thoughts and behavior in different settings. So I don't think she could put on a hat and be like, oh, you know what? Like, this is our job. This is our livelihood. Let's just, keep it together and act cool in a room. She can't do it.
But would we
She's
want that? Right? Like that
no,
sounds fake. That
exactly.
sounds like what Lala was
Totally.
doing, right? That's Lala being
Totally.
like, let's put on my money hat and let's work
Yep.
together, bitches, right? Like,
Yep.
you know,
100%. Yep. Yep. I completely agree. I don't want to watch it. But I just don't think she could actually do it anyway. So
yeah.
Dolores is kind of like wanting a show, but she hasn't got the right cast to do that. And I look, I know there are the tree huggers and the Melissa Stans and all of that, but I actually am relieved that it's taking a break. I actually wouldn't be upset if it didn't come back. I feel like that just whole thing needs to go on a Dorinda pause for a while, and let's revisit it in many years and keep it in the same pocket as Vanderpump. I think we need a little break from all of those people too. And then let's get some new blood and new life. Like, I have become obsessed. I'm so late to the party with Southern Hospitality. Have you watched it?
Oh, I thought you were going to say New York, and I was going to be like, no, and I'm hanging up on
Oh
you
God,
now.
no.
But no, I love
No.
Southern Hospitality. It's so
Yes.
good.
I'm
It's
so,
Baby
I've just been
Vanderpump. It's
binging
so
it.
good. Yeah.
It is exactly. These are young people, real relationships, real history, messiness. It's completely OG Vanderpump vibes. And I am so excited now for the next season.
Yeah.
And so that's where I want to put my energy in the
Hmm.
valley. New people, new stories. I want to put my energy there.
But for New
I don't want
Jersey,
to
would
be,
you want like a whole new cast then? Like, would you
no,
want
I
a
don't
full
think so.
reboot?
No, I think we need to just put the city on hold because anyone that comes in at this point, I think, is just going to be filling the boots and trying to, be whatever the show was. Like, I
Right.
think even the new girls that joined, in the last couple of seasons, I feel like they were being very Jersey, I don't know that
Hmm.
it was authentic. And to be honest, I didn't really care about them very much, Danielle and what was her name? I've even forgotten. The one with the nose job.
Rachel.
Rachel. Like,
Me too for a second. Yeah, if we forget their names, you're not making
yeah,
much of an
and
impression.
exactly. So I just feel like that whole franchise can just take a pause. And there's so much else. Salt Lake City is brilliant. I could watch that all year round, and I just Miami is coming back. Summer House is coming back. We're in Southern Charm season at the moment. There's so much else that feels
Exactly.
lighter and
Yes,
fresher and better.
totally. Well, in Salt Lake City news, I have an announcement. Brittany and Jared are officially dating. And I didn't see that coming, but we got the announcement the other day. And then Brittany has been posting all over the place over Christmas. They spent Christmas together. What do you think about Brittany and Jared Osmond?
Do you know what? Actually so happy for her because I just think, we have all been in that relationship where you're like chasing the guy and you just know it's like you just feel like he's the one and everyone else around you is like, no, he's not that into you or whatever. And I'm just so happy that it actually
Yeah.
happened for her.
And
Whatever we
sometimes,
think of him, you
yeah.
know?
And sometimes you just want to prove
Um,
people wrong and be like, yeah, he is my boyfriend. Showed you.
Exactly. And I think all of her content is hilarious.
It
I think
is.
she's like totally leaned into this kooky, all about me kind of version of herself. And she doesn't really care what anybody thinks.
Hmm.
And I'm kind of loving it. Like
I
it's
I think
great.
she's very hilarious and fascinating and interesting. And I haven't decided, not that it's my decision, I haven't decided whether I feel she would be good as a full-time housewife, but
Mhm.
I want her back. In whatever form, I want her back. I think she is hilarious. I think her stories are hilarious. I think the way she presents herself in situations and in scenes is hilarious. I just want more and more. Like, I want to know about her children. I want to know about all that stuff that we missed this season. So,
Yes,
yeah, I'm here for it. I don't
absolutely.
anticipate that Brittany and Jared will be together for long, but I'm sure when they are no longer together, she will make an announcement.
Exactly.
Okay, well,
Yep.
we
I
have
hear
one
you.
other little piece of news. This is just a little bit of Summer House. So, as we know, Lindsay Hubbard had her baby, Gemma, and she was actually on Jason Tarek's podcast last week. It's called Trading Secrets. It's like a money podcast. And so she was just talking about the money of Summer House and the money that she's making. And I guess she was talking about how people were sort of coming for her when she had her baby and how she monetized her pregnancy because she had her Clear Blue pregnancy announcement. And then when she gave birth, she was eating her Jimmy John's subs. And she made this really interesting point. She's like, look, my job now is an influencer. That is what I am saying that I am doing, right? It's not like she's saying she's doing something else and making this money on the side. She's saying, I'm an influencer. So that's my job, right? I need to monetize on situations that will make me money. I get reached out to by brands, and certain ones of them are bigger than others. And the ones that are big, I will jump on because that is my job. So I'm curious your thoughts about this concept of monetizing your pregnancy or your baby when that is your job to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not something I would feel comfortable doing, but I think all power to her, and she's in a unique position having come from the PR world where she
Hmm.
can really make this work for her.
Hmm.
And it's not just, Hello Fresh, like here in Australia, everyone who's been on The Bachelor or any of those shows, they're just all about like teeth whitening and Hello Fresh. And it's like lame and we all can see right through it. But
Yeah.
I think it's clever. I think all of her self-marketing is clever. That ad she did after breaking up with Carl, it was,
Oh, the
I don't know,
Cheetos one?
goldfish or
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever it was. Yeah. Hilarious. The caption was unbelievable. And if she's putting out that kind of content that has a link to the things that we're seeing on TV, and the real kind of drama and things that are happening in her world, I think she's going to be wildly successful. And I think good on her.
Good on her. I mean, she's always been a workhorse. She's always been a really hard worker,
Yeah.
but we just knew her in a different facet, right? Now we're watching her being a workhorse as an influencer. And so let's
Yeah.
watch her do her work. She's doing good
Yeah.
work.
And also, I think it's really good that she's owning it because I
Hmm.
can't stand
Yes.
when, we get these fake jobs for people on reality TV as like we're pretending, Sierra's a nurse. Like, is she really working as a nurse? When was the last time she worked as a nurse? Was it in COVID?
Does it
Um,
still say nurse?
I think it's like now nurse slash model.
Okay.
But like, that's just one example, but there are
Yeah.
so many. And like on all of those Bachelor
Right,
franchises, they're
right.
all given these fake jobs, and we all know they're just on Instagram. So
I
the fact
actually
that she's
remember
upfront,
Caitlin Bristow. Do you remember her from The Bachelorette?
yes.
So hers, I remember, said dancer, and she brought it up recently on a podcast that she did with West Wilson from Summer House, where she was saying she didn't know what they didn't know what to put for her because she didn't have a real job. She was an influencer, so they put dancer.
How
So you're right.
ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. So I think we're coming to an era now with reality TV where people are much more upfront about it. Like we've
Right.
got a new series coming next year in Australia of Married at First Sight.
I love that
And
show. So
so
good.
good. And the promo just came out, and there are characters on there who are saying up front that they're an influencer or they're a content creator, that sort of thing, which
Right.
never would have been done before. And I think that's part of the audience criticism. It's like, oh, we know everyone goes on these shows just to get famous and to get a social media profile so they can, be an influencer. But we all accept that this is a real genre or area
Right.
of work. So let's just own it and let's just say what it is and gives it more of that authenticity. And I think then the audience will hook in better. So I actually think it's really smart of Lindsay to be really upfront about it and not pretend it's anything else.
You actually look a lot like her, by the way. Has anyone ever told you that?
I look like Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm looking at you, and next to me, I'm looking at a picture of her. Side by side, you look like twins.
Oh my God, I will
Yeah,
take that. Thank
she's
you.
beautiful, so of course take it. Okay, well, Jana Firestone, thank you so much for being here today. Please tell us where the people can follow you if they want to see what you have going on.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. This has been so much fun, and
I
I
loved
can
having
talk
you.
about Bravo all day long. So thank you so much for having me. If anyone wants to see what I'm doing, it's Yana to be annoying. It's Jana Firestone on Instagram. I'm really not good on all the other platforms. Instagram's really the main one. Or you can go to the website, which is www.thecuriouslife.net. And the podcast is The Curious Life Podcast, wherever you get your pods.
Thank you so much. Love you, BBs. See you next time. Thank you for listening to I Take Bravo Very Seriously in partnership with Hurrdat Media. You can listen to this show and any other episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch full-length video episodes on Hurrdat Entertainment's YouTube channel. You can follow me on Instagram at I Take Bravo Very Seriously and at The Bravo Investigator. You can follow me on TikTok at The Bravo Investigator. If you enjoy the show, please leave a 5-star review. Love you, BBs. See you next time.
A Hurrdat Media Production.